Hey guys, another video for our Crime and Emergency Services in Japan playlist. We're in a park next to an elementary school and they've just announced that there's going to be an evacuation drill. So we already knew about this, it's been advertised and everybody's been advised that it's going to happen, and we even know what time it's going to happen, and in a moment they're going to play very loudly through the speakers of the school a sound of a earthquake to get everybody in the mood. Here it comes. So we're quite some distance away, and those speakers are actually inside the school buildings themselves. So they're extremely loud. Obviously they can't simulate the ground moving, but they just do this to obviously cause a little bit of trauma to get everybody in the mood. What they teach is that while the earthquake's actually happening, the kids get under their desks or underneath something else that's solid, and then once the earthquake actually stops, that's when they'll give them instruction to actually evacuate the buildings, and they then move to the open field next to the school itself. And then today the next step is going to be that they'll be told that there's a tsunami warning and that they have to move to higher ground. So these drills are practiced in most of the low-lying areas around the coast of Japan and have been for probably forever. But in particular since the Sendai tragedy, the practice and the precautions that are being taken by the cities are obviously much more stringent because they realise the consequences of not doing so. In this case, what's particularly difficult is that in the Sendai earthquake and following in the tsunami, the school had an evacuation plan like they always do, and that said that the kids had to go outside to a field like these guys did. Now what's happened is they've been told, okay, there's tsunami coming, their school's only a few meters above sea level, right, we've got to go up the hill. So they've been coming up this long gradual hill, and then from here it gets steeper and it's really high, and they end up on a hill that's about probably 400 feet, so maybe 150 meters or 200 meters or something like that, which is where they need to be. So they're evacuating the elementary school and the junior high school, so that's what we're going to be watching. They've also told the parents that they want the parents to attend as well if possible. The idea was supposed to be that they could walk the kids back home after the drill, but it also makes the parents familiar with the evacuation area and so on as well. So you're going to see elementary school kids, junior high school kids and parents. So what happened in Sendai was that they evacuated the school into an oval next to the school, into a park next to the school. And then there was a long period of time, some of you might remember, we made a video live in real time when the earthquake happened. We were in central Japan and we felt it and we knew it was a big one, and we turned on the TV straight away and it showed what was happening in Sendai, and the tidal wave, the tsunami hadn't come yet. The tsunami had not arrived yet. And there was quite a long period of time between the earthquake and the tsunami arriving. And during that time there was some debate. Some of the kids said they wanted to go. There was a hill that was as high as this one, actually. It was about 220 meters apparently, that was nearby the school, and some of the kids said they wanted to go up on the hill, and there was might have been a teacher or two that said it as well, and there was some parents that turned up that said it as well. And some of you might remember we made a video recently and said that in all our how-to videos, most of our how-to videos, usually our advice is to go with what everybody else is doing is the best way to live in Japan. But we also said in a recent video that you sometimes have to draw a line when it comes to safety. And if everybody's doing something that you consider to be not safe, then sometimes you need to stand up. And in this case what happened was that the parents, because everyone was Japanese of course, so the parents have all said, okay, what are we doing? And the school said, we're staying here. And a couple of the parents apparently said, look, we think we should go up on the hill. And the teacher said, no, stop panicking, don't worry about it, it's all okay. And of course it wasn't. The tsunami came through, and some of the kids had left, some of the parents had taken the kids away, but most of them were still there. and the tsunami came through and wiped out the school. And so there's been a lot of talk about that over the years since then, and it's actually been in the courts. Some of the families are suing the schools for, obviously, for negligence. So, as we've talked about in previous videos, this is the problem with the programming thing. You know, everybody's programmed to do a certain thing, and in that case they were programmed to go to that park, and the common sense, there was actually warnings that there was a tsunami coming that was 10 meters high, and some of the other parents had heard it, and they were telling the teacher, look, there's a tsunami warning, there's a tsunami coming that's 10 meters high. And so some people already had heard the warning. But as we've mentioned on previous videos, when the programming says do a certain thing, it's very hard to get somebody to do anything differently, because they're all programmed to do a certain thing. No one wants to step outside the standard and do something different. So it's exactly what we're talking about on a previous video. We're talking about independence. You know, some people say that what the kids are given in Japan is independence, and that leads to independent thinking, and we've said we don't agree with that, and we've seen no evidence of that at all. And that was another example of that, is that the natural instinct is to go with whatever the senpai or the sensei says, or whatever the book says. And if the book says that we've got to wait in the park, we wait in the park. So just a tragic event. One in a series of tragic events actually connected to that Sendai tragedy. There was a lot of sad stories that came out of that. We were hearing sad stories every day at first for months. We'd see every day on the news and in the paper, we'd see these stories that kept coming up about these tragic things that had happened. And then it's, you know, still monthly after that, and they still pop up now and again. Now we hear these sad stories that pop up now. So it's huge event. So we watched all the elementary school kids go past. They started with the oldest ones first, which sort of makes sense. The biggest kids go first because they can go faster. You don't really want the faster kids at the back pushing the smaller kids, or going over the top of the smaller kids if there really was a tsunami coming up behind them. So let the faster ones go first, get them out of the way, and then the slow ones come after it and go as fast as they can. It's about the best they can do. If you happen to be in Japan when there is an evacuation like this, obviously this is a normal day and it's only a drill, so there's cars all over the place, but the standard is that you don't take your car, as tempting as it would be, because obviously it wouldn't work logistically. If everybody tried to take their car up the hill, we'd end up with a big traffic jam. We'd end up sitting in our cars when the tsunami came. So the plan is supposed to be that you just go on foot, and people that live in coastal areas like this all know that the highest point and how to get to the highest point the fastest way. So if you do spend time in Japan, you'll see signs. We've showed you signs before. Lots of signs have appeared in the last few years, actually since Sendai, that will tell you the height above sea level of various locations. So particularly public buildings, city buildings, police stations, fire stations, places like that usually have a little blue sign on the outside that says how high above sea level it is. They've actually moved a lot of fire stations and emergency services as well. The ones that were in low-lying areas, they've moved to higher ground. Makes sense, doesn't it? You want those guys active if there's a problem. Some of you might remember we actually showed you the tsunami warning system. It's pretty good now. The messages come through on our phones. You see it on TV. They actually show, maps will appear on TV, and they show red lines around the coast where the tsunami warning's in effect. They tell you what height you can expect the tsunami to be. They've got buoys that float in the ocean offshore and measure any tsunami activity. And it's all automated, so they're pretty good. So that was what made the Sendai thing even more tragic, was that there was enough time. There was actually enough time for most of the people to get away, but the systems just let them down in a few different places, and that caused a lot of the tragedy there. So just the last bit of the hill, you can see it's a real serious hill. There's a lot of really tired people at the end of this exercise. So at the top of this hill there's actually a high school. So those kids are pretty lucky. All they got to do is walk outside. They're safe up here where it's probably about 150, 200 meters. Might even be more. It's pretty high. So the high school kids just walk outside, and the junior high school kids and the elementary school kids are all coming up to them. And you see some parents mixed in there with these kids. They weren't really supposed to be, but they sort of ended up mixed in with them. And then the rest of the parents were trailing along behind. So those of you who are coming to Japan, don't let it worry you. The chances of being injured in an earthquake in Japan or in a tsunami in Japan is pretty remote. If you look at the statistics, how many people have been killed in those events in the last 100 years, and how many people are in Japan. There's 127 million people in Japan, so it's pretty remote. It is pretty remote. And these guys are super cautious, as we showed you before. So their evacuation systems, I mean, they're even better now. That's one thing that's come from Sendai, is that they've really improved a lot of their systems. So here they are on the top of the hill, nice and safe, out in the open, next to a big sporting hall. That's a city sporting hall there. And they just do a roll call now and check everyone's there, and then the parents take the kids home. Anyway, there it was. More videos coming soon.